Hey, I'm Marshall.
And I'm Anna, and we're excited to continue this series called The Rock.
This whole series is about life-changing experiences. Do you have a story that you can share with us that kind of rocked your world?
I don't know if I have one that's rocked my world, but I have been watching a lot of videos of the Australian wildfires and have been taken aback by the complete devastation to humans and animals, and got to see this video of this man who had seen a koala in danger with fire surrounding it. He ran in, took the shirt off his back, grabbed this animal, and ran back to safety. And I was just blown away by this picture of humanity at its best.
That's so cool. So let's watch this God story and see how it can change our life.
Did you know that some snails can sleep for as long as 2 years? Hi friends, my name is Zulema, and today we are going to look at the story of Jesus' death and his coming back to life. And we're going to zone in on the idea that Jesus' life rocks heaven and earth. But I guess I should start where things turn dark. It was a Thursday evening and Jesus was with his disciples. And towards the end of the meal, Jesus began to wash the feet of his disciples. He did this to show his disciples what it really looks like to love and serve others. After dinner, they went to another place to pray. And while they were praying, one of Jesus' disciples, a disciple whose feet he had washed, betrayed him. His name is Judas, and he turned Jesus over to a mob. They took Jesus to the home of Caiaphas, the high priest, and there was also a council of leaders there with him. They also tried to get people to lie about Jesus and say that he had broken God's law. Then the high priest said, "Tell us if you are the Messiah, the rescuer, the Son of God." And Jesus said, "It is as you say, and I will be seated at the right hand of God." And that was all they needed to hear. They said that he was a liar and he deserved to die. They spit in his face and beat him. Early on Friday morning, they tied Jesus up and led him to Pilate, who was the governor at that time. And Pilate tried to talk to Jesus and ask him some questions, but Jesus didn't say anything about the charges that were brought up against him. Pilate, he didn't believe that Jesus deserved to die, so he gave the people a choice. He asked them if they wanted him to release Jesus or this well-known prisoner named Barabbas. The crowd shouted for Barabbas to be released. And then when Pilate asked them what should be done with Jesus, the crowd shouted, "Crucify him." And Pilate asked them why, and all they did was shout even more for his death. Pilate handed Jesus over to be hung on the cross. On the way, there was a man named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross all the way to Golgotha. And that place is also known as the place of the skull. They nailed him to the cross and divided up his clothes, and the soldiers sat there and kept watch over him. And as people walked past Jesus, they hurled insults at him. Soon heaven and earth would be rocked by his death. And from noon until 3 o'clock, the earth was covered in darkness. After Jesus cried out, he died. And then there was an earthquake, and the curtain in the temple was torn from the top to the bottom. Eventually, his body was taken down, and it was buried in a tomb, and a huge stone was placed in front of it. Pilate also sent guards to the tomb because the religious leaders were afraid that all of Jesus' followers would break into the tomb and take him out and claim that he had risen from the dead. So there were guards there, there was a huge stone in place, nothing and no one was going to get in there. And while we know that he didn't stay dead, his disciples at the time didn't know that. All they knew was that their friend, their teacher, the person that they had called their rescuer and their Messiah had died. Even though Jesus had told them all of this while he was with them, that he was going to die and come back to life, it just didn't seem to register in their brains that he wasn't going to stay dead. Let's read what happened next. Suddenly, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. So there was this powerful earthquake, and again, heaven and earth were rocked. Have you ever noticed that in this story before? Then an angel rolled back the stone, that huge stone, and he sat on it. And the guards who were supposed to be guarding the tomb were so freaked out that they fainted. The angel told the women not to be afraid, that Jesus wasn't there and that he had risen. The angel showed them where Jesus had been lying, but he wasn't there. The angel also said to them, "Go and tell his disciples that Jesus is alive and that he is going ahead of them into Galilee, and they will see him there." So the women hurried away from the tomb. They were afraid, but they were also filled with joy. And on their way, Jesus appeared to them and he greeted them. And immediately the women bowed down at Jesus' feet and started to worship him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid, and go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." It's pretty cool that Jesus, in a time when women were looked down upon and viewed as second-class citizens, asked these women to share that very important message of him coming back to life. And what a message. It is definitely great news, friends. Not only does Jesus' death rock heaven and earth, but his life does too. And this rising from the dead, this resurrection, it rocks the whole world. And it shows that Jesus is stronger than death and that he is who he says he is. Jesus' life rocked me, and it can rock you, and it rocks heaven and earth. Thanks for spending your time with me today. I really appreciate it.
You know, Jesus' death didn't go unnoticed. But when he was raised from the dead, this was no small thing either. In fact, it was such a big deal that it literally shook the earth.
Yeah, we hear that there was an earthquake, an angel showed up and rolled the stone away in front of the grave, and his body was so bright that it was as bright as lightning.
That's kind of crazy. We want to share a story with you, and this may not be about earthquakes, but let's watch how Joshua and his parents experienced a life-changing moment.
My name's Louisa,
And I'm Wehans.
and we have 3 children. We have Grace, who loves to make movies,
And we have Josh, he's a big joker.
and our youngest is Audrey, and she loves unicorns.
We love traveling and we love to see the world with our kids, but we also love the outdoors and we love to do everything in all the seasons. In the summer, we love to be at the beach, but in the winter, we love roasting marshmallows and doing campfires, and it's just great being outdoors.
So when Joshua was 6 months old, he had a very major seizure. I brought Joshua to Sick Kids Hospital to get assessed there, and after the testing, they determined that it was epilepsy.
An epileptic seizure happens when sudden abnormal electrical activity moves through a part of a person's brain. They might have loss of consciousness, sudden uncontrollable movements, or they might only briefly lose consciousness, have a staring appearance, and then feel confused afterwards. Or very mild, uncontrollable movements in one part of the body while a person is still awake.
Unfortunately, the initial medication that they tried was not controlling the seizures, and so eventually they tried another second medication at the same time, and that also did not control the seizures, and we were told it was very severe. He was having 6 seizures a day, which we understood was very severe because 3 seizures in a month is considered very severe epilepsy.
We were really frightened and really scared, and we cared so much for Josh, but then seeing how hard of a time he was having and that the doctors actually said, look, I don't think it's gonna get better.
One day when I was just feeling very discouraged, it was just such a difficult time seeing Joshua go through all this, then I turned to the Bible for some comfort and encouragement. So I opened the Bible to Matthew chapter 4, and I was amazed because it was talking about Jesus healing these different people with different diseases, people that have been paralyzed, and it specifically said people with seizures. So that just jumped out of the page at me, and I felt like God was saying, you know, I'm powerful, I can do this, and I can heal him. So that helped us to just put our trust and faith in God that he does have the power to do this still.
We got our home church together, and then we actually did something where we laid hands on Josh and then actually anointed him with oil, and we all then started praying for Josh and praying that he would have healing, praying that God would really be there and present and lift him up, and we dedicated him to God. And after that, something miraculous happened. 2 weeks later, from having a seizure every day, 6 times a day, the seizures all of a sudden stopped. And then we called the doctors immediately. We said, the seizure stopped.
He was just so amazed to see how Joshua was doing. He said, looking at the notes in the chart of how he was doing before and comparing to how he is today, I did not expect to see this child here in front of me.
The big thing for me is really seeing that all of these miracles, all of these things that happened in the Bible from thousands of years ago, it's not just from thousands of years ago. We actually see them here and now, and it's so powerful, and really through Jesus, all things are possible.
Marshall, I am completely blown away. Joshua had up to 180 seizures a month. That in and of itself sounds impossible. But to know that he was completely healed after his home church prayed for him, this is a miracle.
It really is. It just shows because of Jesus dying and raising from the dead, we get to celebrate miracles like that, as well as miracles of people deciding to follow Jesus for the first time.
I know, this is amazing. It's time for our small groups. Why don't we break off and see what this looks like in our own lives?
See ya.